Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to be refuting the claim that implementing a plant-based diet will improve environmental and human health. So my opponent's secondary claims are: first, meat and dairy products are the cause of many people's ailments, both cosmetic and life-threatening. Their second secondary claim is decrease in meat and dairy production means a decrease in greenhouse gas production and biohazard waste. And their third is raising livestock contributes to mass land loss that damages the environment. So in their first claim, meat and dairy products are the cause of many people's ailments, both cosmetic and life-threatening. They state animal-based products bring forth health risks that put millions of lives in danger, but there's no real evidence of this as far as millions goes, and they also use their personal experience, which cannot account for everyone. They also claim meats and other animal products contain saturated fats and chemicals that can cause high cholesterol, weight gain, and cancer. This is assuming the target audience is consuming meat and animal product daily or in moderate amounts. And vegan diets also rely heavily on soy products, which are high in calories and contribute to weight gain as well. My counterclaim to their first argument is that cosmetic ailments are not enough of an issue for some people to sacrifice consumption of animal product. Studies show that only 5% of cancer stems from poor dietary intake and 20% stems from obesity. Obesity is not a direct effect of consuming animal products. It consists of multiple factors, including overeating, and specifically overeating high-calorie foods lacking nutritional value. A study shows that no traditional culture sustained a completely vegan diet. There's some form of animal consumption in every lifestyle around the globe. It's easier to stay well-nourished and have a balanced body with the consumption of natural animal fats and proteins. For example, there are many vitamins that cannot provide there are many vitamins that plants cannot provide, like vitamin A and vitamin D. My opponent's secondary claim, decrease in meat and dairy production means a decrease in greenhouse gas production and biohazard waste. They provided no evidence of how many people would need to be vegan to make any actual impact on the amount of gas production and waste reduced. Cows would still be living and creating waste regardless if humans consume them. They claimed livestock account for 64% of ammonia emissions, which cause acid rain, as well as immense methane production, which affects global warming 23 times more than carbon dioxide. According to Virginia Ishler, an extension dairy specialist, cows can produce ammonia through the combination of their urine and manure, but ammonia emissions have a very short life in the atmosphere, several hours to a few days. My response to this is there needs to be more statistics to compare how much water is used in comparison to beef. They compared that it was around roughly 4,400 gallons of water to produce 3 pounds of beef in comparison to the water to produce like potatoes or wheat, which was in the hundreds. On average, an individual person can use 100 gallons of water per day, totaling to 36,500 gallons a year per person. This proves that to save water, there are other areas that can be focused on cutting down waste than beef production alone. In response to greenhouse gases, it was stated that 64% of ammonia stems from agriculture production of livestock, and that is an inaccurate number as further research shows only 40% is accounted by livestock, and 34% of emissions come from mineral fertilizers and biomass burning and crop residues. So not only do livestock cause air pollution, but the agricultural industry as a whole does. Reducing meat consumption can lower this, but that means more crop consumption instead, so it would result in more pollution coming from the crops. Over-industrialization and burning of fossil fuels harms the planet immensely. And their third claim, which was that raising livestock contributes to mass land loss that damages the environment, they gave a statistic by the Natural Resources Conservation Service about the acreage required to raise cattle. And I felt that this was not a strong source to use because the NRCS is motivated to preserve farmland from being converted to non-agricultural use. They claim that farm use of fertilizers and pesticides creates toxins that seep into the ground and surface water, which increases water purification costs and decreases fishery. Fertilizers and pesticides are used on crops to preserve them. These same toxins that are probing us to purify safe drinking water are also being used on the fruits and vegetables that sustain a vegan diet. And my final response to that was, while agriculture is responsible for most of our environment's deforestation, in addition to producing pasture lands, soy production is responsible for 80% of deforestation. In 2014, world consumption of soybeans was projected at 9.884 billion bushels, which was 40% higher than 2004. Since a vegan diet relies heavily on soy product, the contribution veganism has to deforestation is comparable to omnivores consuming beef. So I felt all in all that some of the evidence and points made were equal to the partaking that omnivorous diets play in our environments. In
All right, the structural stuff is pretty solid. I think that you do a good job suggesting that there are both other causality and we'd be just making trade-offs in some of these situations. On the first point, when you talk about an absence of evidence on this particular idea concerning the influence of meats and those sorts of things on people's health and diet, you kind of undermine that by presenting the need for some kinds of fats in the diet, the notion that soy products also have some of these same issues, create some of the same problems. I thought that was pretty good. The cancer argument, you had a great statistic here, but I don't really get a source on it, and I thought that was a little bit problematic, the statistic that says only 5% of cancer cases are related to diet, and by the way, that means a smaller percentage are related to diet related to meats or dairy products. And I'm going, so where's that information come from? Who said that? I don't really know. And that seemed to be a little bit problematic. You make a reference to a study that says that there's no culture on the planet that is completely vegan. I'm going, okay. So I guess the suggestion here is that the possibility of eliminating meats from the diet or the use of animal products is really hard to comprehend or perhaps impossible to achieve. That's the long-term inference, and I don't think you want to be shy about making those as claims. Sometimes we're getting evidence, and the tendency that people have is to try to let the evidence make the argument for you. I think you need to make a claim to go along with the evidence, and we don't always get that. The vitamin A and vitamin D issue, I think, also needs some documentation, although I've heard that before, so I'm inclined to believe it, but I do think that you need to cite it for everybody. The greenhouse gas argument on the second point, I think you've got a couple of interesting ideas here that there's trade-off. I especially like the idea, for instance, that you had at one point, I guess it's actually on the third point, with the amount of deforestation being a result of soybean crops as opposed to anything else. That sounded like it was very impressive information. Again, that's one of those places where I think you need some source citation. You criticize the NRCS and say, well, they're biased because their motive is to reduce the use of land for these purposes. And I'm going, that makes everybody who has an opinion biased. I don't think that that's the way that has to work. I think you want to make the argument that says that they are looking at worst case scenarios, that their models, for instance, are probably predicated upon something that's going to be more favorable to their position than something else. But the idea that they're biased simply because they have an agenda, I'm not sure that that's automatically the case. I really, like I said, I like that statistic that you had at the end that talked about how 80% of the deforestation is related to soybean production. But we don't get a source on it, and that seems to mitigate a lot of the environmental issues that they're talking about. I'm still not sure how the water issue relates to greenhouse gases. That seemed a little vague. I did like the one piece of evidence that suggested that ammonia in the atmosphere is only there for a short time and it's not really going to be doing any particular harm. All right, thank you.